Do I only need to know the pentatonic scales? I was emailed this question this week, and I thought this would be a good question to address in a video. I'm sure other people out there have asked this question. I know I myself asked this early on when I was learning to improvise. This is when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I was just kind of figuring it out. And the first scale I learned was the minor pentatonic scale. And it changed my world once I realized that I didn't even need to know the names of the notes on the fretboard. I could just find this starting note just by one string. I'd use the first string, and I would kind of feel around until I figured out what key the song was in. And then I could work out, my one pattern that I knew. And I could play, I could improvise and sort of sound like I knew what I was doing. And it was just enough to keep me interested. It was a little carrot that, that sort of propelled me into the next level. But when I talk about the pentatonic scale or scales, I'm really talking about the minor pentatonic scale and the major pentatonic scale. They're two separate scales, but in the guitar world or in the fretted instrument world, it's the same shapes. And that's why they're so popular for guitar players. So in other words, you learn one little thing here, and you can move everything down 3 frets, and you can play the same thing, but this would be minor pentatonic scale, this would be major pentatonic scale. I'm going to demonstrate all of this in an upcoming lesson. This is a teaser I'm doing for this Friday's video. I don't normally do teasers like this, but the upcoming lesson, and if you're watching this out of context, maybe you're seeing this months after or years after I put it up, the lesson's going to be EP436. So you can go to activemelody.com and do a search for EP436. We're going to do a deep dive on the pentatonic scale and really understand what are these patterns, how do you use them. I'm going to give you practice material. I'm going to give you kind of a game plan for how to use and think about the pentatonic scales, the major and minor, and then also how to blend them. And that's kind of the magic of the pentatonics, is learning how to take major and minor and blend them. But anyway, back to the question, do I only need to know the pentatonic scales? The answer to that may be yes. It may be all you need to know. And the reason I say that is, if you look at the big players, I'm talking about legendary guitar players, the ones that sell out stadiums and sell millions and millions of records. Most of them are pentatonic scale players. I'm talking about B.B. King and Angus Young and Jimi Hendrix to some extent. Well, no, Hendrix, he'd be in there. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Clapton. I mean, we're talking about legends. And for the most part, they just play the pentatonic scale. They play the major pentatonic, the minor pentatonic, and they blend them, and they're good at that. And it shows you how versatile the pentatonic scales are if you can take Angus Young and B.B. King and put them in the same category. Because, they obviously have very different sounds, but it's what you do with those notes that give you your unique sound. So to answer the question, that may be all you need to know. If you just want to be a bar band, like a cover band, maybe you want to play a local jams, local blues band, you want to sit in and do that kind of thing. Or maybe you want to sit around the house and just play along with your favorite album, which is like my favorite pastime in the world. The pentatonic scales are great for that. I mean, can you get more advanced? Yeah, of course. You can always layer things on, but to get you started, that is definitely the place that I would start. That's where I did start, actually. And it's really the most easy way in. And the reason for that is every note in the pentatonic scale work. So whether you're playing minor pentatonic scale or major pentatonic scale, every single one of those notes that you're playing, they're all going to work. So you don't have to necessarily think about playing the chord changes like, oh wait, are we going to a minor chord here? Are we going to a major chord? Is there a diminished thing happening? You don't have to worry about it. You just find the key of the song and you stay either minor pentatonic scale or major pentatonic scale. I'm going to go into detail on that in this upcoming lesson, EP436, but that's basically how it works. So some of you may be asking, well then why would I need to know anything beyond the pentatonic scales? Well, that's where you get into just playing a little more advanced or more articulate. It's probably a better way to say it. When I think of, like, a good example to me would be Robben Ford. So with Robben, you have a pentatonic scale player. He plays a lot of, minor pentatonic scale, classic, straight up, hardcore blues. And then all of a sudden, you'll hear this diminished scale thing that he'll just sneak in there, like the half step, whole step scale or something like that. Or Anyway, he'll work that in, and then he'll go right back into the minor pentatonic scale or major pentatonic scale. And I think Robin's just very clever at blending these worlds, taking jazz and elements from jazz and then traditional blues and sort of putting them together. He's kind of one of the best examples. Larry Carlton is another one. He tends to be more jazz, but then I'll still hear, you know, plain old pentatonic scale stuff. And I know that a lot of guitar instructors like myself, my peers even, you know, kind of, you know, what happens is we get more advanced because we do these videos over and over again, so we just assume everyone else wants to follow along. Well, we kind of forget that a lot of people out there, their goal isn't to necessarily be a virtuoso and set the room on fire with their guitar playing. They just want to be able to play in the game. And you just want to be able to go hang out with a band and sit in and play. I get that. I know how that feels. I was that guy too. So I have to kind of remind myself every now and then that the goal isn't necessarily to create virtuosos out of everybody. Sometimes you just want to be able to express yourself. And the pentatonics are perfect for that because you don't have to think about chords. And any of the notes within them, they're all going to work. One last little thing I'll mention here is the pentatonic scale is a universal scale, meaning I think it's like in our DNA. And there's this really cool Bobby McFerrin video. If you haven't seen it, I'll link to it on the screen, and then I'll put a link in the description below. It was a TED Talk video that he did years ago where he talks about the pentatonic scale and how he actually gets an audience, a large audience, to sing the pentatonic scale collectively just by where he stands on the stage. It's something you got to watch because it's something so entertaining and clever. But it just shows you, and his point was just how instinctive that scale is. You know, and he says he does it in lots of different cultures, and he gets the same response everywhere. So I think that when you look at these legendary guitar players, like the ones I mentioned, the reason that the masses buy their records or go see them live is because we can relate to what they're saying, you know, either vocally or with their fingers when they're playing their solos. I think there's just a relatable element to that. It doesn't mean that someone like Joe Satriani or Steve Vai isn't relatable. They're relatable, but they have a much more niche thing. They play more modally, so when they're improvising, it's more into the mode thing. Or you look at the jazz guys, you know, like Joe Paz or Grant Green or whoever. Also incredible. And if you can take little pieces of those and work those into your pentatonic scale or whatever your foundation is, that's where it all starts to really sound like you. So anyway, this upcoming lesson, EP 436, is going to be a really thorough deep dive, kind of like a little mini course on the pentatonic scale, how you use it, and give you practice materials, and also a game plan for how you might think about it initially, and then you might layer on some growth within the pentatonic scale. And leave a comment below if you're a pentatonic scale player, or maybe you aspire to be one, and you're happy with that. You don't necessarily need to move into anything more articulate than that. I'd just be curious to know how many of you are out there and kind of what your thoughts are on that. All right, we'll see you in the next video.